Weekly service online edition, coming to you from the coolish Unitarian parlor here in Holton, Maine at 10 degrees on Martin Luther King Day weekend. And today, in today's service, we're recognizing the life and ministry of Brother Martin Luther King Jr., reflecting on ways to continue the work of social justice that still remains. And it's also an open pulpit Sunday. So we'll be sharing some readings, stories, or reflections related to our year-long theme on belonging. So we're glad you're joining us, no matter where you might be, online or right here. And we want to thank you for spending part of your day with us. For our prelude this morning, we played a snippet last week of it accidentally. So we're going to play the entire song today. It clocks in at 1 minute and 54 seconds. This is the slack key Soquel Rag by the Doobie Brothers, off their 1975 album Stampede. And if you remember the album cover, it shows the 5 members of the band on saddleback riding horses on the American Western Plains. And the guy in the lead is wearing this sombrero. So, slack key Soquel Rag. Centering silence. Drop everything that was said in the coffee room as you entered today. Drop everything that you brought with you today in your head, in your backpack, or your back pocket. Forget about your busy work week. Forget about things you plan on doing later this afternoon. Instead, simplify this moment and just be here. Breathing, the mind going where it may. Don't try to do anything. Just be alive to the moment of being right here now, listening to the sound of the chime. Comfortable on the back couch. Would you mind coming down just for a moment and helping us light the chalice? Have you done this before?
No.
Okay, orientation required. Okay, you'll find a long matchstick in the holder, and we're just transferring the flame from our ritual match, the candle, to the chalice in the center of the altar. Go at your own speed. We're in no hurry.
That's good. I'm pretty slow this morning, which is actually not contrary to most mornings.
And then we're going to extinguish the ritual match candle.
Like a pro.
As we light the chalice on this MLK weekend, may this small flame give us the inspiration and strength for vigorous and positive action. May the challenges we face not hinder our progress or dampen our enthusiasm. We follow the light. For opening words this morning, I have a couple of quotations from Martin Luther King Jr., and you'll find more in today's bulletin. It's hard to just select a few. So for this year, for today's service, these are our opening words. One of the great liabilities of history is that all too many people fail to remain awake through great periods of social change. Every society has its protectors of status quo and its fraternities of the indifferent who are notorious for sleeping through revolutions of change. Today, our very survival depends on our ability to stay awake, to adjust to new ideas, to remain vigilant, and to face the challenges of change. We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is already today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action. The arc of a moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Our hymn for this morning is number 121. And I was looking for a song in the tradition of MLK. We came up with, we've sung this before, We'll Build the Land, but it's been a couple of years since we've sung it. So it's a good thing there's 4 verses. By the time we get to the 4th verse, we should have it back. So let's stand and I'll give you an opening chord.
We'll build a land where the characters
storms on the West Coast, California, Southern California, to the Bay Area. The amount of rainfall, mudslides, wind. So we're thinking of the American West Coast this morning, for the past week and a half, actually. Just lighting this candle for new friends we met at the coffee house last night. Some new musicians showing up, and seeing some old friends who we haven't seen since pre-COVID. And just being back in that space last night was great. And new connections, you know.
I just wanted to mention the name of Don Rollins. Was talking about him last night. You know, celebrating the coffee house. Don Rollins was the UU minister who he was here doing the service, my very first service that I ever came to here, and that was it. I just continued coming. He was the one who started the coffee house because he felt that there needed to be a place for people who were not into substances, you know, to come and have a good time, and so he made a habit of starting a coffee house in whatever church he served, and he was a guy who went and did temporary stuff for churches that needed a minister for a time, and at any rate. We still have it, and it's wonderful.
So what year was that, Karen?
That was 1992. So,
Years ago.
Lighting a silent candle this morning. Unspoken prayers, any concerns we might have, and any names we'd like to bring into today's service, to our circle of compassion, to remember that, and people who are close by and far away.
Cricket in the corner.
Her wife Linda and her family on the loss of her mother.
I often say Lance and Sean at this point. Lance and Sean.
These names and these concerns we hold this morning in the light of love and compassion. May the group energy this morning amplify and strengthen our connections far and near. May we seek closer connections to those that we casually know or folks we've known for years, to not take those for granted. On this day, we pray that all may find blessedness of heart, stability, and peace. We are one on this day. Amen and blessed be. And then I went searching for a reading that might go along with MLK Day. And there's one in our book. We use it every year. So I decided to just go ahead and use it again. Number 584. And you may recognize a few of these quotes. Title is A Network of Mutuality. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny.
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
There are some things in our social system through which all of us ought to be maladjusted.
Hatred and bitterness can never cure the disease of fear. Only love can do that.
We must all evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation.
The foundation of such a method was love.
Before it is too late, we must narrow the gaping chasm between our proclamations of peace and our lowly deeds which precipitate and perpetuate war.
One day we must come to see that the peace is not merely a distant goal that we seek, but a means by which we arrive at that goal.
We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means.
We shall be out of the mountain of despair, a stone of hope.
So this is Open Pulpit Sunday. I promised we'd be starting by 10:30, so we're pretty close. And it's the first time we've done one of these post-COVID. And periodically we would do these, we would select a topic and then just share readings. And this year it makes sense to do one on belongingness. And it's wide open. A reading, personal observation, or last week you mentioned if you have a question you want to present to the group. That might be interesting and start a little conversation. We'll see if we can answer it. We all have, we're all eager to answer questions around here. And, so I did bring the gavel in case anything gets too long. I'm going to coordinate or oversee the open pulpit. If someone goes, it's actually go 10 minutes, Dawn, I'm going to, this is like the gong. I'll give a whack. I was going to start out with my McDonald's drive-through story, but I'm going to save it and see how this open pulpit works. I think we need to get it started. So the pulpit is open. You can come down here and talk behind the pulpit, beside the pulpit, or right from your chair. You stand up or just stay on the couch, Joshua, if you want to. Anything goes. And we're trying to practice our, best policy, best behaviors. To try to listen closely to everyone, and also to speak openly. And we're going to try to listen to what you have to share with the group as part of modeling situation crafting. That's what we're doing this morning. So here we go. And if you want to speak, you can raise your hand or just come down. First person who gets down here. I saw Karen's hand first. Oh, no, okay. I saw Dale's hand second. Dale? And Joshua's ready. So, Joshua, yeah, make a move. Come on down. I'm just going to sit next to Dan here.
Thanks, Joshua. I grew up like everybody else did. As a child, that's how I started off. One of the interesting things that I've learned throughout the years is that, and this is for me, I've turned spirituality into, or psychology in that way, into math in my own head. So my dad is a pastor. I've moved around a lot, and one of the constant things, at least in my reality, is changes in perspective. So our perspective controls our attitude. Our perspective controls our heart. Our perspective controls how we see. So imagine, as an analogy, that we open a refrigerator, and we all open the exact same refrigerator of life. We open this refrigerator because we're hungry for life. We want to do something that makes us feel alive. And inside of that refrigerator is all the things that we can do. But our perspective is like, I like mustard. And we have our aversions, and we have our the things that we like, and that's what we tend to see. Even though every individual is opening the same fridge door, our different perspectives show us different possibilities and create different meals, which are the events that we go through in life. Those are the meals that we prepare. So to make it quick, one of the magical things I've experienced here at UU is that opening of that perspective. And as my belief expands, as my understanding expands, so does my awareness of other people's needs, of my own needs, of other people's pain, of my own pain, and how transformational that is to allow myself to say that my attitude really is my own choice. If I choose to be jaded, if I choose to be bitter, or if I choose to be appreciative and live in gratitude. So that's one of the things that I've been experiencing over the past few months, and just wanted to share.
Thank you.
Deb's going for coffee. Deb?
Last week, I was really intrigued by the reading that Dave included in the bulletin, which he asked me to read. I'll just read part of it. It was written by Lawrence Overmeyer. What is really important is not what we believe to be true in our heads, but what we know to be true in our hearts. Love. In other words, if a person is loving and kind, that ought to be enough to connect with one another and work together for the sake of all of our children. There was another person who wrote a treatise on love, the Apostle Paul, in his first letter to the Corinthians. He gives us these words: love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. Love does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. Now, a lot of us think this was written as a treatise or guide for romantic love. In fact, it was read at both my weddings. Didn't take the first time. And I read it at my granddaughter's wedding a couple of summers ago. But Paul wrote this as a guide to the people of the church in Corinth who were fighting over issues within the church, infighting. And I wonder, what were they fighting about? When I was a senior in high school, I played the organ at a Baptist church in Danielson, Connecticut. And one Sunday when I went in to warm up the organ, the adult Sunday school class were arguing over whether angels were male or female. So I wonder what they were fighting about. There's one phrase in here: love does not insist on its own way. And I disagree with that, because of course love insists on its own way. That's why we marry or live with the people we love, we choose to love. That's why we go into a certain vocation. That's why we vote a certain way, because we want it to be our way, what we believe is right, as love dictates, and also it helps us decide where we want to worship. And since our congregation, I'm a former UCC pastor, my name is Dale, by the way. And since we've been worshiping here, and David was our preacher for many years, half the time, I feel that I can insist on my own way that Jesus is my way to find God, but I love that some of you have other ways to find God and your higher power, your divine source that leads you. So I love this church because it lifts us to a higher plane where we see a bigger picture, and we can still insist on our own little things like which hymn we want to sing on Sunday. But the larger picture is that love reigns, and Jesus was once asked, what is the greatest commandment? And he said, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. May we live that way so that we all belong. Kezzy was one of our congregation.
Reverend Dave and I were having a conversation last week, and I said to him, I don't even know if I'd be a good participant in this open pulpit, but I've been led to come up here and do it, finding my voice. I'd just like to quote a song that I know I'm not going to sing it, thank goodness for all of you. But it's about Martin Luther King. And all you soldiers of peace, hatred has an enemy. If we want the fighting to cease, we must remember the words of the fallen king. Darkness does not take away darkness. Only light can do that. Hatred cannot drive away hatred. Only love can do that. And we've been talking about love today, and love is the way. Love is definitely the way. An eye for an eye will make everybody blind, and our children will never see. So darkness cannot drive away darkness. Only light, the light within each one of us can do that. And hatred cannot drive away hatred, because only love can do that. And I'm very grateful to be going to this UU church. I came here because this is the only liberal church in town. And I saw Reverend Dave before I came on the first Sunday that I came, I saw Reverend Dave at Coffee House, and he was up there with a harmonica, and I go, I want to be around a minister like that.
Dawn was playing a pretty mean harmonica last night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know you played.
And singing and guitar.
Okay.
I got one.
In America, I learned the art of the filibuster.
Thanks, John, we got.
Thank you all for making me feel I belong in such a diverse group. Thank you very much. That's it.
I have to say, I'm not going to get up front. I'm just going to appreciate what you said. Every one of you had something wonderful to say, and it just fills my heart. And this is why I love coming to this church. It's the most loving, most warm and receptive church I have ever been to. Everybody's allowed to be him or herself as they are, and we're all okay as we are. So thank you for all of your words. You filled my heart today.
I'm not the only one to have my phone in front of me, but my name is Kezia. Like Dale said, I used to belong to the Congregational Church. I'm very happy to be here. And I found this poem by Nicole Mitchell. It's not written by her. All she says is it is a friend with the initials of SP. But it is it's titled Belong. My baby has stopped growing from lack of food. My brother kills as a means of belonging. My sister's heart aches with confusion of her gender identity. My father lives in the shadows for fear of being sent back to his homeland. My mother takes from others to gain for herself. My grandfather drinks to numb his pain. My grandmother abuses the weak. My son is a thief. My daughter is a prostitute. I am all of these things because we are all of these things. My baby floods the world with wonder and joy. My brother gives half of his earnings to those in need. My sister kisses the cheeks of orphans. My father marches for justice. My mother is a warrior, strong and courageous. My grandfather builds wells for those who have suffered without clean water. My grandmother cradles a child, breathing his last breath. My son volunteers in rural schools. My daughter heals the broken through medicine. I am all of these things because we are all of these things. My baby is the blade of grass piercing the soil. My brother is the rain for bringing life to creation. My sister is the eagle feeding her baby chicks. My father is the mountain proclaiming its majesty. My mother is the dust from which we came. My grandfather is the blue sky. My grandmother, a warm breeze. My son is the ant working tirelessly. My daughter, a beautiful butterfly. I am all of these things because we are all of these things. Sit with the hurting. Feed the hungry. Breathe the fresh air. Feel the soil beneath your feet. Close your eyes and picture a world with no borders. Let the intensity of the pain, the hurt, the shame, the fear, the brokenness lead us to the truth that we are one and belong to one another. SP.
Watching the clock, but we seem to have plenty of time.
Well, I probably should say something as well, but I'm going to take your option too. So you're being one of the newer people around, but I'm not new around because I've been here since 1977. But like Joshua, I also am a minister's son, and my four sisters and I mean, we really felt the belonging thing, really growing up in a church family. I mean, it's a goldfish bowl type of thing, and there's a little bit of gypsiness to it all, but it was incredible. I missed all your talks on belonging, so I'm not sure what it was all at, but it seems to me the big thing about belonging, to me, is whether you could be a lighthouse keeper, not hardly see anybody anytime, or a monk, or who knows what. But the biggest thing I think is a key element is the being in service in some way to each other. Whether it's with a social crowd or whether it's something on your own. And for me, certainly at this stage of my life, I'm totally into being now. So this seems like a good place to be for being, not for doing. So I don't plan to ever get up in the pulpit, for instance. I knew I didn't want to do that as a kid, seeing my dad do sermons every Saturday night. Not going to happen. But I think I sort of forgot what was my whole point, but let me just see if I can think for a second. But I think the belonging, again, is this being in service to each other here and elsewhere. And the thing that makes me feel really belonging is just my awareness and really astonishment of just being part of nature. And nature is always there. You don't get tired. I mean, you can get even most anything, business, even conviviality, or everything can get a little old, but never nature gets old. And I totally feel part of it. I feel you're part of it, and that really makes me feel belonging. Whether it's with my Cocker Spaniels or you guys, but that doesn't seem a fair comparison, but or blades of grass, I don't know. But there's something there that I feel good about the whole belonging thing.
Dr. Brashett, when you were doing your doing, you were Jim's doctor and you discovered his heart disease that led to surgery that has had him here 22 more years. Thank you.
Wow.
And your dear father, early on in our marriage, he subbed for me whenever I could take a Sunday off so that we could have a Sunday off. So I loved your dad.
You're giving me goosebumps now.
We belong to each other.
And the same goes for me with you, Dale, and with Jim's family, and there's a history there in this lovely town. It's just been, it was an amazing choice for us to come here, and we're just so grateful.
Well, part of the theme, we haven't spent much time on it yet. We've been on Cohen's book, but the expanded concept for this year, belongingness and building a sense of place and community. We were talking about Holton, not specific spot, geographic. And Martha Newman, my predecessor here, she polled our congregation at one point of how many folks were local, from Holton, and how many folks had moved to the area for whatever reason. And she was expecting initially a very high, state of Maine, Holton connections. And we had 90% of our group that was active at the time had no connections originally to Holton, but they had come here for various reasons and had developed that connection and felt very, very much a part of Holton, loved it. And she did a series of sermons called, she explored exiles in the Old Testament concept of wandering exiles. Walter Brueggemann was a theologian that she loved. And I followed up on that concept, did modern day exiles. And we had, it was a year of conversations of why are we here? What are we doing? And nature kept coming up. A lot of the New England transcendentalist connections. Our theologies may have been very diverse and different, but we did share this love for gardening, biology, local history, and finding community. Even if someone were homesteading in the backwoods, they would still come out occasionally and were looking for connections, culture, something going on in the town of Bolton. And I still see we're doing the same thing now, whole different group, the turnover. If you took a poll when I first came 20 years ago, Karen and I go back. She was here when I arrived, but so much. The continuity is very fluid and strong. stretched in historic connections, aware of what we're unaware of. Anyone else wanting to jump in here?
Maybe. I actually came here with something I've been reading recently that actually has me distressed. And I read it 2 or 3 times because it's so profound to me. The New York Times, a couple of days ago, published an essay. I wish I could remember the title of it, but it was published by a tenured history professor at a major university on the death of the teaching of history. And we all know, if we're paying attention, that there are governors and state legislators that are putting universities under pressure over what they call critical race theory, that young people today should not hear history that demeans their race because they're not responsible for something that happened 300 years ago or segregation however many years ago. And but what really happened today was thinking about belonging and thinking about Martin Luther King Day, which is tomorrow. My youngest nephew, when he comes home, sits with his grandmother, my mother, and goes over family history and genealogy. So belonging, part of belonging is who we are, where we've come from, our history. And I find it, I'm a big believer in the teaching of the humanities or liberal arts, whatever you want to refer to it as. So this essay was devastating in several ways because instead of just, political arguments or things going on in social media, it talked about what's actually happening in universities. Most universities are no longer hiring and tenuring history professors, professors in foreign languages. They pay them $3,500 per course or semester or whatever. That's it. And so there's a real erosion going on, but we're here today remembering the work of Martin Luther King and talking about it and what his pacifist movement helped fix. And so this distressed me a lot. I have a former neighbor, and he's such a great guy, and we disagree on almost everything. He has 40 guns, I don't have any guns. He thinks free speech means we can say anything, conspiracy theories, I kind of don't agree with that. But he pulls my car out of the driveway and stuff. So we're great friends. But he posted something on Facebook that is a meme that is part of this movement against liberal education, the humanities. And I fired right back on Facebook, but I have a degree in philosophy, and I have a decent job that I use those skills I got. And no, they don't make me an electrician, or they're not specific to a trade, but we have to preserve those things. So my point is, and what we're doing here today as well, is we have to, none of us personally can fix what's going on with tenured professors in universities, but we can speak up as we are here today, and as a congregation or a community like this does, just by being present in the community. So that's kind of about belonging. It's kind of about the importance of race and educating about history, but it seems to connect in my mind.
Yes.
I'm a strong believer in the sharing of voices, and the more speakers you can have, even if I don't agree with them, like you were saying, Steve, I still want to create the dialogue or connection. If I need my truck pushed on a snowbank, I don't care what their political affiliation is, I just need some help and feel connected. So, at the McDonald's drive-through window, it's like, I have no awareness of the staff at McDonald's or who's coming. I just want my darn breakfast and get here to my work. But by the time the window's freeze, it's like, and I did get my order finished before the person on the left. So I pull around and I get to the window first. I get my doors, I have to open my door, to do everything, to place the order. And then you get to the first window, so you're paying for it. And so I have to drive past the window, leave space, so I open my door, and reach out, and I explain, oh, my door's frozen. And the lady behind me also her door is frozen as well. So, and I'm not sure how many more people are gonna have this trouble today. And usually, you don't chat very often when they drive through a window, because they're busy, they don't have time to talk. But this opened itself to, it was a connection. It was a humorous, then go to the second window and go through the same routines. And the lady behind me is going to be coming up here in just a minute. And all of a sudden, there's this human connection, sharing of the challenges of facing the cold, 10 degrees in Holton, Maine, and we've got so much moisture in the air all weekend. And I was so confident I wouldn't have that trouble when I pushed my little button. And I did. So all of a sudden, drawing us back to our theme on belongingness, we've been talking about empathy as like the key part of what we're talking about, and the challenge of that. How do you connect to and have empathy and a real trying to put yourself in someone else's position before you say or do anything or become impatient, and opening to total strangers when you're shopping at a local store, or that same empathetic approach and connection to people that you know, or the infighting deal. When there's, and it can be such small things that we are suddenly concerned about that we forget and get emotionally sidetracked of the more important, the larger pieces of our life. If we could look back and review our past week, we say, oh, I should have really, those things weren't important. It would have been more important to do this or that, or to feel connected. And at coffee houses that happens. Things did not go smoothly last night. But when you get that many musicians want to get on stage, and chords, I've never seen so many chords in my life. And we got 3 sound men there. John, who's been there for 29 years. Me, I'm not qualified, but I fill in. And then a new sound man, first night on the job, and he's got a full board, 12 channels full. And we got through the night, and the sound was really good. I never heard Bertrand's, I could never get the sound mix on his guitar as good as Simon did last night. And Cindy was in the kitchen, her first night in the kitchen, had no idea. And she went through it. Donna, it was her second night in the kitchen. And it felt like a group effort. We pulled it off. It wasn't easy or always smooth, but you got your suit, Dan?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good. And a brownie.
We need to send a message to Don Robbins.
Oh yeah, that's a whole story in itself. We had Don back for our 10-year reunion of a coffee house. And when I did a cold call to Don on the phone, and I explained who I was. I introduced myself on the phone, and said, we're having a 10-year reunion of a Holton Coffee House, and would you come and be our MC and our feature? And he looked at me and said, oh, Dave, he's a troubleshooter interim minister before they had the term interim back in those days. And he said, oh, I never go back to the church where I was hired or served. It's not professional protocol. But he said, in this case, I'm going to make an exception. Because his 2-year or year and a half stay here, there's something about Holton that stood out. And he said, you know what, Dave? I didn't even think the church would be there in 10 years, let alone the coffee house. And he said, I want to come and see what's going on. And to see people he worked with 10 years ago. And everyone showed up. It was like a family reunion. It was part of our bicentennial, or a centennial of the building. Happened to coincide with the 10-year anniversary of the coffee house. We made a big deal out of it. And you're right, Karen. That was a special weekend. And at Dawn, of all the coffee houses he ever started, it's like this one stood out in his memory for whatever reason. And like after a coffee house, you judge it by just the feeling that you have when you walk away, who you met that night, or the mix of the show. Even if things don't have to be perfect, But there is this, what ties it together are the connections. These short conversations that might happen or occur in a group of people in person, listening to live music and good food, even on a cold, dark night at 9 o'clock at night. So with that story, Karen, you've got me going. We were almost on track to being done on time. But these conversations just to keep going and going. That's why we're going to continue doing some more services on Belonging and shall be here. So thank you for everyone who contributed this morning, and it's important to continue these. We'll do some more Q&As as we please build them into the services. So with that, let us extinguish the chalice for today. And let us appreciate moments such as this, where things occur that we may not have expected, yet we can walk away glad that we have been here together. Amen.
We want to thank everybody for tuning in today. If you'd like to show your support, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel if you're not already subscribed, and help us out by sharing this message by clicking the share button. If you'd like to make a monetary donation to you, Church Holton, there is a link to our online donations in the video description down below. And again, thank you so much and have a blessed day.